A very good morning to you and welcome to the tackle on this 26th day of the month of October, the year 2022. It's been a long year and it's still going on. We've had a number of issues happening, the campaigns, the general elections, the petition at the Supreme Court, the swearing in of the head of state, and a lot of things that are happening. But here on the tackle, we actually look into matters happening and tackle them as they come, boldly and credibly. And today we have Mr. Newton KHAMASI, who is a Kenya KWANZA youth leader. And remember, it is a Siasa Wednesday. RUTH AMBOGO, the advocate, will be joining us later on, but we begin by looking into what is happening in this country and probably offer some kind of opinions and what can be likely solutions. You can share the broadcast and you can also contribute and let us know where you are and how you're getting us. My name is CORNELIUS OMUSE and I'll be standing in today for Gerald Bitok as we make this thing more bolder and more credibly. Good morning, Mr. Newton KHAMASI, and welcome to Siasa Wednesday on the tackle.
Morning to you, my brother.
Well, most welcome.
Yes.
Feel at home.
I'm privileged to be here.
That is nice.
It's a great show.
Yes.
And I think it has been informing Kenyans in a bold way.
Excellent.
Yes.
Now, we begin by looking into some of the news actually today that are headlines on our dailies. Yes. And there's this debate of the parliament vetting.
Yes.
After vetting the cabinet nominees that President William Ruto forwarded to them, it's coming out that one of the nominees, that is Paula Malonza, was actually rejected unanimously. And then the minority side has actually rejected 5 of the nominees. Before we go to the minority side, let's begin from the majority side, from where you sit.
Yeah.
Do you think the decision was actually well-informed, or there could be something that you feel should be looked into deeper?
From where I sit, I am a young person. And as young people of this country, we have experienced a situation where we have the knowledge, but we don't have the opportunity to express this knowledge. With the Penina Malonza case, it is simple. No one knows how to do a job until they get it. And sometimes in life, knowledge is never equated to performance. In my own small wisdom, I feel like our parliament should approve Penina Malonza because our president, His Excellency William Ruto, is a man who does not just make choices. He knows how to pick his team. When the year started, he picked a team. He put up a team to win the government. And it indeed won. Despite the challenges we had, you saw people saying, oh, Musalia, if you take Musalia, you get a bonus of Wetangula. But it has ended up rewarding the two. So where I sit is I believe that William Ruto knows and understands the capabilities of Ms. Penina Malonza. And in his own wisdom, he opted to pick her for that industry because he knows what she can do. And an interview should never be based, a job reward should never be based on a job interview. That is why in developed companies that have grown huge, they never base hiring on one-off interview process. They usually do physical, they do audio, they do... You get me? They do all sets of interviews so that at the end of the day, they can do an average. So trying to limit or to stop Malonza from being the CS tourism based on facts that can be improved. One thing we need to give it to her is she has never been a CS for tourism. She has never been in that environment. But that doesn't mean that she cannot do whatever is required of her in that ministry. Therefore, if you look at her academic qualification, it's outstanding. If you look at her attitude towards the job, it's outstanding. But on that particular day, sometimes you wake up, my brother, and the day doesn't. Wanasemanga umeamkia mkono wa shoto, sio wa kulia. You get me?
Yeah.
So it all portrays that as a country, we need to change the way we interview for jobs. We need to change the way we give these opportunities because this lady, honestly, from my point of view, she qualifies to be the CS tourism.
Thank you. Now, you as a member of Kenya Kwanza regime,
Yes.
you've actually spoken about the capability of the President William Ruto, which is actually no doubt that he has got that capacity to actually make a team that delivers just from his past history. But what is coming out here is that Malonza was rejected unanimously. Remember, majority leader was there, that is Kimani Ichung'wah, was even reading the report yesterday. The chairperson, the speaker is also a member of Kenya Kwanza, that is Honorable Moses Wetangula, and other members from the government. There are other political observers who are actually saying that some signs of defiance to the president is actually emerging from what has happened yesterday, especially on the Malonza side, that members of the Kenya Kwanza did not actually side with her, members who are in the committee of the vetting. What's your take on that?
My take on that is simple. You understand, and the comments from our president, His Excellency William Ruto, have been that whoever is given a role in his government, in all the state departments, in all the positions that they have, starting with Parliament, Parliament has its own legislative role. We have Kimani Ichung'wah, who is the leader of majority. We have all these other parties to that who are in the leadership of the House. It will be so wrong at these early stages to see them singing to the tune of the president. It is not supposed to be that way. We are in a mature democracy. And I believe that there is no sign of defiance. Honorable Ichung'wah and the other committee members who are from Kenya Kwanza. And right now, something you need to understand is that yes, they are from Kenya Kwanza, but they have one sole responsibility, to work for the people of the Republic of Kenya, not to work for the president. And the president has been very clear that if I give you a job, you better do your job. It is not you, it is not me you're working for. It is the people of the Republic. And I believe in their own thought, in their own small wisdom, when they were expressing their thoughts on this particular appointment, yes, on that particular day, after Malonza walked out of the interview, you could have felt that she might not be capable to do the job. But again, if you look at it critically, as I said, knowledge does not always equip to performance. And you just need to get an opportunity to be comfortable, to be given a chance. Myself, as an example, Justin Muturi, who I congratulate for being successfully vetted and finally approved by Parliament to take the AG's position. He opted to give me, a young person without experience in that sector, to be his spokesperson. If he dared to stop me, then I wouldn't have brought up the best of myself.
There you're doing today.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you see, that is the reason why I'm saying Kimani Ichung'wah and the team in the House, even Speaker Wetangula, they are supposed to do their job independent of the presidency. And the president has been very clear. Let everyone do their role.
Many thanks.
When the opposition side brings the concept or the thought that there's some form of defiance, that is a misguided thought.
Many thanks. The Duchess of Maragoli, that is the Iron Lady herself, Ruth Ambogo. Glad to see you, my friend. It's been a long time.
It's been a while, yes.
You look sharp, confident, and prepared for the day.
Those CS nominees.
Newton will not take it kindly. So, Ambogo, just as you've arrived, we've begun by looking at this issue of the CS vetting.
Yes.
Unanimously, Malonza, Penina was rejected, and then the minority side rejected 5 members added with Malonza. But now we've begun with a unanimous decision.
Yes.
What is your take on the rejection of Malonza? Is it justified, or you think there's how it could have been approached?
You know, sometimes I say that in fact, this is a discussion I was having with someone yesterday, and I was telling them that you can arrive at a table with all the qualifications required and needed. But then when you get there, your confidence levels, your articulation of issues, your ability to be able to express yourself gets you out of that particular table. And it is nobody's fault or nobody's, nobody's business that you failed to actually prove that you indeed have such qualifications. And it is at that particular point that people get to ask themselves that, did you really qualify? Do you really hold the right qualifications for this particular office? Are your qualifications credible, Because, when you listen to that lady, I am in a certain forum where people, regardless of whatever political divide they were from, were actually saying that lady was totally underwhelming and did not seem to appear as if, and it is not just opinion they were giving after she was unanimously rejected, but opinion they were giving while she was on that particular bench being vetted, that she appeared as if she did not know what she was talking about. She appeared as if she had absolutely zero experience with that particular department. And remember, for you to be appointed as a CS nominee doesn't necessarily mean that, you are being appointed for what you've qualified for. Because remember, for instance, Susan Nakumincha is not a health practitioner, but she was being nominated to become a CS for health. And one could see the kind of effort she put in to understand the docket that she's going to hold. But in contrast with Malonza did not seem to have done her research well. She doesn't seem to understand the tourism sector. And forget not that this is one of the very critical sectors in this particular country. Kenya is hailed or heralded as one of the countries where tourism is actually doing very well, or it's actually one of the biggest earners for Kenya tourism. So we need somebody who is not only understanding what they need to do in that particular office, but someone who is passionate about it, And passion is something that you cannot buy. Passion is something that you are either passionate or you are not, So from my take, this is a lady who clearly looked as if she did not understand what is required for that particular docket. And what we need to agree as Kenyans is we need the right people for those positions. We are not saying that we are rejecting you and therefore nobody else can hold that office. How many Kenyans are qualified to hold that particular office? How many Kenyans understand the tourism sector? And that is why I would get to a point where I would fault even, sorry to speak, but sorry to say this, but I would fault the president for going on to pick people who don't necessarily understand what their dockets require of them to do. For instance, we might as well celebrate Nakumincha, and I do. She's a sister from where I come from, and I do celebrate her. But where I would take fault is that why would we appoint people who don't necessarily are qualified, or who are not necessarily, whose qualifications, we are saying they're qualified, but do their qualifications match the dockets they're going to hold? Because remember, at the end of the day, there are technical issues that will arise in your docket. At the end of the day, there are issues that go to the core of that particular docket that will arise. And that is why you'd see the president keen on appointing, for instance, the former governor of Central Bank to hold the position of CS Treasury. And that is one appointment that I'd say, well done. But then when you pick people who, yes, they have master's degrees, some of them even having PhDs, but their PhDs and their master's degrees and their degrees do not match the dockets they're going to hold. One wonders that you want to tell me that in the entire Kenya, we do not have people who have gone to school to study for tourism, or even if they haven't gone to school to study for tourism, there are people who understand tourism so well because they've either worked within the tourism sector, they've either held a business around the tourism sector, so they understand the intricacies of the same. That is where when you have a mismatch of appointments, you get these people get into office, and then when technical issues arise, they're unable to resolve those technical issues, or a particular department will not be able to achieve as intended for them to achieve because of the mismatch in terms of skills and qualifications. And also, just as I had begun by saying that sometimes your qualifications can bring you to a table, but if you are not confident enough, if you don't do your research, if you don't, if you don't put your best foot forward, then it is up to you it is only your fault if you're removed from that particular table simply because you never prepared for that particular role. But let us also not forget that sometimes nerves do get in the way of things. That you might find that somebody actually really prepared for this interview, but then when they get there, they get so nervous. I mean, we've had instances in our personal lives where we've gone for interviews, we've gone for sessions, we've gone for forums where you thought you had totally prepared. Then you get there and the nerves just take over the day.
And things
so we don't know how to classify this, but there are so many ways within which we can look at it, and I have mentioned the various ways within which we can look at why this lady was actually rejected.
Thank you, Ruth. Now let's dwell on this matter of mismatch and matches. There are people who are saying that two wrongs do not add to a right, but they're also trying to look into the past regimes, right, from the first president of the Republic of Kenya, the second president, the third, the fourth, and even the fifth. Yes. There have been this notion that tutapea tu Ruth hapo juu hata kama ni whichever ministry, then we shall look for a PS who is competent, who runs the ministry. Is it a precedent that we've set that anybody can be appointed as a cabinet secretary? Because from there, we shall now briefly go to the counties and you'll see the people that have been appointed there as county executive committee members. And the same argument is coming up that the chief officers, we shall appoint professionals. What's your take on this? Is it precedence? Can it be changed? Politics must take the center stage?
There's no way it can be changed. Maybe just to be improved. But something that is very critical that we need to understand, Cornelius, is picking up a CS is a political decision. This is someone who is supposed to believe in your political ideologies, Cornelius. And from where we sit, and as I've told you as we started the show, we have a president who knows how to pick his team and is a team player. That does not mean that if one is not capable at this point, at the end of the day, they are not going to deliver. People talked all sort of things when Ruto was putting up the KWANZA team. But apparently, who won? So the end usually justifies the means. And from my own observation is that we're not talking about political rewardees or something. Because there are some qualities that the president saw in a particular person. That is why they were given those positions. An example, look at Moses Kuria, the CS nominee for trade. This is someone, if you follow his conversations, is usually business-oriented, is usually thoughtful on the things that he does. And the president gave him the Ministry of Trade. Ministry of Trade involves a lot of his people from the mountain region. So he better understands those things better than any other person. And therefore, in the strategy that president used to pick these CS nominees, was well informed. And as much as we want to say politics cannot be part of it, this is a political game. You have to put people you trust, people you believe that when you sit together as a team, you can always pursue an agenda as a team.
Many thanks. Now, that is the part of the unanimous decision. Yes. Let's come down to the minority side and then see whether the situation that is at hand, whether it can be edited, it can be changed, or it will just proceed as it is. The case of agriculture ministry, that is Mithika Linturi, the case of Aisha Jumwa, the case of Ndungu of Treasury, the case of Zachary Njeru of Lands. Ambogo, on that part, the minority side have also given their report, and then they have said those five members plus one from the unanimous, that is 4 + 1, are not eligible. What is your take, beginning probably, let's look at them independently without putting them, beginning from Aisha Jumwa?
Well, I have been one who holds quite contradictory opinion when it comes to Aisha Jumwa. And I remember when she was appointed, I first held an opinion and then thought about it twice and asked myself, is this really the right opinion to hold? And of course, opinions change. And of course, she's going to hold the Ministry of Gender. She's supposed to lead the Ministry of Gender, public service. Yes. And it's a big ministry. It is a ministry whose previous holders' shoes she's going to fit actually very big shoes in terms of when you look at in terms of academic qualifications and credentials, in terms of basically what the previous holder of the office was able to achieve. The previous holder, Margaret Kobia, is one lady who was, I mean, in all the definitions, a tough iron lady who achieved quite a lot with her ministry. It is through her ministry that so many women who were in politics were able to be supported. So many projects around women, the vulnerable within the society, children were launched. So many initiatives around her, because I had the privilege of engaging her at one particular point when we were trying to lobby for BBI, especially the youth aspect of BBI. And she seemed to me like a very intelligent woman surrounding herself with quite a capable team of people. So when Aisha Juma was appointed, I mean, the first thought for me was, would she fill these shoes?
Yes.
And of course, my original answer was that I doubt she would fill the shoes. But then I sat down and asked myself that, you know, when we talk about the Ministry of Gender, what are we talking about? We are talking about a ministry that is supposed to handle issues of women mostly. Because gender, of course, as much as we say gender is both women and men, but in Kenya, the context of gender is usually tends to lean towards the groups that have been marginalized for a while, which are mostly women. So we are talking about somebody who is supposed to handle issues of women. But when you look at, if we were to look at qualifications only, then you'd automatically rule out this person and say that, look, your academic qualifications in comparison to the previous holder of the office will not guarantee that you'd make a good CS for this particular position. But when you look at experience in terms of life experience, in terms of this person's political experience, in terms of what they've been able to achieve as a politician, given their background, then one would say that indeed this woman actually is qualifies to be a proper holder of that particular office with the right support. And why do I say experience in terms of what they've been able to achieve politically? Remember, Aisha Juma comes from one of those communities that still strongly do not believe in women ruling or becoming leaders. You know, women still in her community are still regarded as people who should sit at the back when the men are supposed to lead. So for her to rise from that particular community and lead not as a woman representative, but as a member of parliament, that is something that is no mean feat.
Sure.
In fact, one thing that people need to know is that when Aisha Juma was still in ODM, Raila Odinga used to refer to her as Mekatilili wa Menza. That very strong woman who has overcome so much, who is a woman, a warrior, you get? So that is not a title that is taken away from you just because you have crossed over political lanes and now you support a different political line.
Sure.
If indeed your spirit is that of Mekatilili wa Menza, then you are that, regardless of where you are. So for me, she remains a formidable woman who has overcome insurmountable challenges to get to where she is. She vied for governor. And of course, she definitely did not make it. But that in itself, I mean, to begin to get from that position of vying for being a member of parliament to wanting to vie for governor in itself, in a community that still does not believe in women, was a feat that one would say it was also no mean feat. So for her to be rewarded and be given the position of CS for gender, and not forgetting her personal story of overcoming so much, you know, being pregnant at a very young age, having to drop out of school. And sometimes when you look at her academic credentials, one would say that, oh, you know, because of her academic credentials are not, and I think sometimes the women who have to undergo such situations, when you look at the academic credentials, they might not be your typical academic credentials of a typical woman who never had to overcome challenges like the ones she had to overcome to get to where she is. Of course, notwithstanding the fact that there are issues here and there, cases here and there, Aisha Juma is best fit for that particular position because of the woman she is, the challenges she has overcome. Those challenges she has overcome are challenges she can be able to translate to be able to translate them to her work as a CS for gender and public service. And of course, with the right support, with the right people advising her, with the right team around her, she'll be able to make a good CS. I mean, let us not write her off so fast.
Thank you.
I will allow my colleague to talk about the rest because
now
clearly it's their choices.
Thank you, Ruth. Now, Mr. Newton,
Yes,
on the part of Aisha, Ambogo has given the part of competency, which I think even the minority side did not dissent or had a contrary opinion. But the problem here with the minority side, they talked of her integrity and the case that is facing her at the court.
Yeah.
What do you take of that?
On the issue of cases, we have always been...
The two cases.
the two cases, we've always been consistent from the Kenya Kwanza side. We are saying you're not guilty. You're innocent until you're proved guilty. And that is a point that we really emphasize from our end. We have seen a lot of cases that have happened before. Even our current president, William Ruto, has gone through a lot of struggle to be where he is, because people have put him on a court of public opinion. People have thrown all sorts of bad things towards him, but he has come out to surmount all those things and become the president of the Republic of Kenya. And if you look back, there are some cases that have been happening. You see, like the extrajudicial killings.
Yeah.
Most of them have been happening, and then you hear them say it is His Excellency William Ruto who is committing those heinous crimes. Something that we have consistently, and even himself, you saw during the end times of the campaign, he was so emotive about this issue of people claiming that he's after this bad thing, to a point where he was like, please, if it is a must, then don't go for my family or my children. You get me? That shows you the kind of political guiltness that we trap our leaders into to make sure that they look bad or they seem not to be good people to hold leadership position. But in the long run, if they're given an opportunity, they will just exonerate themselves from all these accusations, something that Aisha Juma is going through. Let us wait and see what the court says. No one is willing to defend a guilty person. Let the court do whatever they are supposed to do. Let them do their mandate. And you recall, the president said, I'm not going to interfere with the judicial system of this country, the independence of these institutions. Let them carry on their own responsibilities, but independent of the presidency, so that at the end of the day, the Kenyan people can get the truthful aspect of all these things.
Many thanks. Now, Ruth,
Yes.
when you look at President William Ruto's manifesto is hugely anchored on agriculture. In fact, we are going there on the issue of UNGA after we are done with this. And he has said that everything he desires to do for Kenya, the basis of everything will be on agriculture. And we've heard the minority side again having some reservations on the cabinet nominee for these ministers of agriculture, livestock and fisheries. That is Honorable Mithika Linturi. I don't know what is your take also on Linturi's side.
Mithika Linturi is honestly, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I find him to be a clown, you know. And I find him to be a clown because of the cases that, the funny incidences that he finds himself into. And I think that is why, as political leaders, as leaders, we must be very careful about our engagements and what we do out there. Because at the end of the day, what makes people take you either seriously or not is sometimes some of these incidences that you find yourself in. Remember, he's been found in so many, in a number of quite interesting and not so interesting positions and situations that would preclude one from saying that, you know what, I don't think this is the proper holder of that particular office. And given, again, once again, the previous holder of that position in comparison to the current holder or the current proposed holder of the position, one wonders that, I mean, how much will we really have any serious policy coming from this particular individual? You know, sometimes your seriousness or lack of seriousness can actually affect your future, appointments or future opportunities. And I know that the Kenya Kwanza side of things would want to laugh about these things, but we as the alleged minority, I will say alleged because they still, I don't believe that we are the minority, but we as the alleged minority see things from a totally different lens because we care about the future of this country. We care about where this country is headed. We care about the kind of people who are going to hold very critical positions. And that is why you'd see that some of the positions, in fact, all of the positions that are being flagged off are actually very serious positions when it comes to the standing of our country, the things that bring value to our country, where we are as a country and our priorities as a country. So because agriculture is one sector that needs a very sober mind. It needs somebody who is serious, And in my view, and I think it must have been the view of the minority, that this is not a serious person to hold that particular position. Once again, notwithstanding the charges that have been leveled against him, that, you know, some of these charges, one would look at them, and in as much as they would want to say that these are politically instigated charges, you know, you ask yourself that, you know, when these charges were coming before the office of the DPP, that when the DPP was prosecuting these individuals, does he want to tell us that at that particular point, the evidence that he had was not proper evidence, or was it that proper investigations had not been done? So for me, I want to agree with the minority that, you know, some of these people are people who are not very serious given their history. And as much as one would want to say that, oh, you know, let's not overlook their history. But when you have a pattern of doing certain things, when you have a history which is not just a one-time thing that you said, that one would say it was a one-time incident, but this is a repeated incident of you being found in very compromising situations, in very in situations that are not very inspiring, then one would just say that, you know, this is your personality, this is who you are as an individual. You might not be able to bring to the office that you're going to hold the seriousness that it requires. Remember that the leadership and integrity chapter of our constitution, I always say this, that the preamble of the leadership and integrity chapter of our constitution talks about the authority being bestowed upon you, being a particular, basically it is us donating our authority to you, and we are expecting you to hold that particular office in a manner that not only brings respect to the country, but also brings respect to the office that you are going to hold. But if you as an individual, in terms of the respect that we are talking about, we see that you lack in that respect for your own personal self, what kind of respect are we expecting for you to bring to the office that you're going to hold? And I think the minority probably foresaw that this is an individual who might bring the same issues that he used to have when he was holding an office as an elected leader, and probably the same issues that he will bring to this particular very serious department that requires a very sober mind to steer it to where we need it to be, given that agriculture is a very serious department that Kenyans are looking towards seeing produce results for us to have a stable and prosperous country. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Newton, something is coming up here. What has been happening on the course of the week as the vetting process was going on, there was this part of the net worth, and I even saw Ambogo posting, people started talking of, oh, mlikuwa mnaambiwa kwamba your network is your net worth, but kumbe imegeuka your net worth is your network, something like that. So what really came up is that most of the nominees were actually millionaires, multi-millionaires. And it kept on bringing so many questions, especially to the upcoming people, the youth, the professionals. They were like having a question mark that, suppose I don't have the millions, does it, what are my chances of ever becoming a cabinet secretary in this country? How did you actually look into that matter?
Cornelius, just before I delve into that, I just want to talk about this issue of integrity that people are throwing left, right, and center in regards to whatever has happened, in regards to the minorities' thoughts. Yes, the minorities must have their say, and they have expressed their thought on this integrity issue on a few candidates who are nominees who are picked by the president. My question is simple. What is the thermometer of measuring this integrity aspect on our leaders? Because we have seen people accusing fingers. It's like we have seen the pot calling the kettle dark or black, rather. And from that perspective, I feel like as a country, we need to sit down and relook. What are the measuring threshold of this integrity that we talk about? Because honestly, you cannot be the measure of integrity when the fact is that the other side of the coin is the one that is in question, and you are not in question. If all of us were subjected to the integrity test, I wish as a country we could get to a point where we have a unique and neutral integrity tester, so that at the end of the day, we don't have political conmanship, political infiltration into someone's ability to serve the country. On your question about the net worth and all that, you could notice that, yes, some few years ago, we were told that your net worth is your network. But as things are right now, based on whatever that people are worth, then as a Kenyan, you need to work hard. People might be throwing stones on the net worth of all those cabinet nominees, because I saw a newspaper that was talking about the total wealth of the cabinet for William Ruto is even higher than that of the Joe Biden's cabinet. One thing I want to say is this. In our Kenya Kwanza campaign journey, you remember Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, who is supposed to be the prime minister of this country, mentioned and said, Kenyans want money in their pockets.
Pesa mfukoni.
Pesa mfukoni. And if you look at the net worth of these CSS, that might have informed the choice of William Ruto to go and pick them. Because one, these are people who started from down, from bottom, upwards. And now they have the net worth they have right now. Would you rather, there's this saying that says, a poor man's advice is confused as begging. You get me? And from this aspect of the CS nominees being worth in form of millions, that is not a ticket for you to being a CS. No. It is just a show of how diligent you have worked hard for whatever you have. You saw the Prime Minister, Musalia Mudavadi, is worth 4 billion. This shows that this person, if given X, he's going to ensure that he multiplies it, or he shows the country how to do this. Would you rather have someone who is listed on CRB to be your CS? Would you rather have someone who is poor or who is extremely unable to even manage his smallness? And I remember in the Bible again, they say this, the parable of the 5 coins. There's the one who was given 5, there's another one who was given 3, and there's another one who was given 1. When Jesus came and called the 3 guys and asked them, I gave you something. What are you giving me back? Those who did not have, it was taken from them and given to the guy who had.
Yeah.
You get me? And that is the same thing here. If all of us we are born without anything, Cornelius. But as life progresses on, we multiply and build our wealth. These people, if you look at their story, they're not people who started working the other day. They have been in the system. They have been working hard in their own ways. And building up wealth to that particular level is an encouragement to any hustler, to any young person, that it is indeed possible for you to create wealth and clean wealth that can be looked upon as a motivator. And I believe from where we sit, I know my sister Ruth will not accept, but the truth is those who have will be added. Those who don't have, it will be taken away from them. So my advice is this to the hustlers of this country. Wake up very early, go hustle, build up, because the more you build up, the more is going to be added to you.
So the concern here that I'm getting even from one of our viewers is that there wasn't even a single space for
a hustler,
for the one who doesn't have. Then now this person to go to be a representative in that.
What is your definition of who doesn't have?
Cornelius.
What is your definition of
Ruth, we are coming to you.
What is the definition of who doesn't have?
Probably someone with a net worth of 200,000, someone maybe from Mkuru kwa Kayaba there, but with papers, with experience, has managed youth, has done ABCD, but this person does not have resources.
Let me tell you something. If I happen to pick you, Cornelius, today, or the president has the privilege of picking you as the nominee, your net worth, if you go down and sit down and do your computation very well, you realize your net worth is not even less than $1 million. It will be more. Why? Because we have inheritances from our fathers. No, it is fact. It is fact.
Some.
Yes, some. And all these guys you see in Mukuru Kayamba, it is not that they don't have a place they call in the village. And they have pieces of land there. You get me? They have been slaughtered for with their parents. Because we are in a generation where our parents' had a lot of land and they have distributed it. There are very few, yes, there are those unlikely situations whereby you will find a person's wealth. You see, wealth sometimes is not equated to the financial aspect. You might be wealthy in a different way, in knowledge. You have your degree, you have your master's. You might be rich in a different perspective of, let's say, assets like land, inheritance, and all that. So this perception of making it look like there's no one who was struggling that was picked as a nominee is misleading. You saw this nominee for housing, Zachary Njeru. He said he's worth 80 million. And if you look at the worthiness, you realize that this is person who owned X, this house here and this house here. I want to give you an example. If Murkomen said that he mentioned he's almost 500 million worth. But in the same interview, we saw Kithika Kinduri saying that he, in his own capacity, loaned Murkomen some money. That shows you that despite all these big figures that you're seeing, there is the reality on the table. And that is the cash flow that people are looking at. So let us not have that perception that the low people, those people who are perceived as poor, there's no poor person. Everyone is wealthy in their own ways.
Thank you. Let's get Ruth's take also on this matter of net
Let me tell you, this if there are people who know how to spin narratives, it is these people called KWANZA people. Just a few minutes ago, he just talked about how the poor people, even the little they have, will be taken away from them. And I was very worried that, the very government that was talking about, uplifting the lives of hustlers is now saying, you person who has very little, even the little that you have will be taken away from you. It is quite unfortunate for us to sit here and lie to our people that all of us have inheritance back at home. We have a huge population of very poor people. In fact, we have statistics that have been done. So many statistics have been done that shows that about, I think, was it 17% of the population? Is it, I think 200 and something people in this country own almost half of the country. And the remaining 17% own the remaining part of the country, meaning that the population of Kenyans who are poor is actually quite high. And we cannot sit here and lie to people that the parents of our parents had so much land that they've distributed to us that everybody has inheritance back at home. We do not have land to inherit. I personally don't have anything to inherit from my father. And now Newton would sit here and even lie to you that that if I sit down and I compute my net worth, I could actually find that I am worth millions. There are no millions, my friend. We are most of us are struggling Kenyans, and that is why I thought that the premise of the government that he happens to be a part of, or the government that he campaigned for, was that they would uplift the lives of the poor Kenyans. And it has been a concern for us that absolutely nowhere in any of the appointments that William Ruto will make will you find a hustler. In fact, let me give you an incident that made me realize that all this hustler thing was a fallacy. Remember when they were going for the presidential debate, where they got Mama Mboga to appear there for optics. Then when they got to some point when they were entering at Catholic University, where the debate was taking place, the Mama Mboga was pushed aside, So basically for me, it is proof, back then it was proof that these people are using hustlers to climb to the top. It was basically a narrative they were creating, something that they did not genuinely believe in. The fact that at these particular appointments, you're not hearing of somebody saying, my net worth, as you have put it, is 200,000 Kenya shillings. And they actually got an appointment to serve as a nominee, as a CS nominee. There is something called representation. The fact that you singled out a whole group of people called hustlers, a whole group of people that you say have absolutely zero money in their pockets, then what you're trying to tell us in essence is that, and by the way, during their campaigns, they kept saying that this group of people lack representation. So then when it comes to the question of representation, because representation is not only at the elective level, it is also at the appointive level. At the very first appointive level of representation, you don't have a hustler. Look at the people who have been approved to become, to go for the PS interviews, the interviews that I'm sure now are coming to an end. Absolutely none of them is somebody you'd call a Mama Mboga or a Boda Boda guy. And you see, it is the very same people who they were talking about representing. And you don't just represent us by coming from a point of view of having a lot of money. In fact, for me, I found the entire narrative a fallacy, because the person who was propagating it himself is a billionaire whose rise to where he is right now is still indeed questionable. Because people ask themselves, remember during the campaigns, I remember I was in Western, in Vihiga campaigning, and I had an opportunity to address one of the people in Vihiga, and I asked him, who are you voting for during these elections? And he said, isn't it obvious? So of course I asked him, so why are you not voting for the people that Musalia Mudavadi supports? And he said that, first of all, are these people true hustlers? They tell us they sold chicken to get billions to where they are right now. And he asked, if there are people who sell chicken in this country, there are people from Western. He says, I have sold chicken. I have done tenders to supply food at schools. I have done all manner of businesses you can ever think of. And I have not touched $1 million shillings yet. I want to understand what formula is this that these people have used to sell chicken and become billionaires, because we chicken sellers actually want to understand that formula and become the billionaires or the millionaires they're talking about. So sometimes I think it is very wrong. It is not even sometimes, it is very wrong to lie to the masses and tell them that you're going to represent them and tell them that this government will be yours. Because remember, at every political rally that they went to, they kept saying, hii serikali ni serikali ya mama mboga, hii serikali ni serikali ya watu wa boda boda, hii serikali ni serikali ya watu wasiojiweza. Meaning what you're trying to tell these people is that when we make appointments, we will include you. When we are talking about representation, you will be there. But then the people who are being represented there, their net worth, first of all, you see, as we were talking about net worth, they were being told, okay, so justify your net worth. Basically, when you say, what is your net worth? Tell us how you've gotten this money. Then they will tell you, I own a townhouse, an apartment, pieces of land here and there. But did they tell us how did they acquire the money to own these houses? How did they acquire the money to own these pieces of land? And by the way, another thing I found very laughable was when Musalia, for instance, says his net worth is 4 billion shillings. And then he keeps saying during the campaigns that he wants to put money in the pockets of Kenyans, that he wants money to be in the pockets of Kenyans. And you ask yourself, whose pocket has he ever put money in? Because I come from where he comes from, and the people where he comes from all say that he has not helped anybody that one can, the real common mwananchi. There's nobody that can come out and say that I am a beneficiary of Musalia Mudavadi's wealth and influence, because as a leader, one is expected that the blessings that God has given you, you should be able to use the same to uplift the people that you purport to be representing. But what happens, and what is clearly being set as a precedence here, is once you get into political power, amass as much wealth as possible, thinking of the future, because you might be appointed somewhere and your net worth might not be what is required for you to qualify to become a CS or a PS. So for me, I find these fallacies that Kenyans must come out and call them out, especially the followers of the KWANZA government. It is indeed very sad when a young man like Newton here, whose net worth is clearly not 4 billion shillings, is standing and defending people whose net worth is 100 million shillings, 200 million shillings, 700 million shillings, meaning that even him is comfortable being denied an opportunity in favor of somebody else.
He could have gotten the opportunity.
For instance, so sure. This opportunity for tourism, he could have gotten it, but is your net worth 4 billion shillings, Newton? So you should be at the forefront of saying, that we needed people whose net worth is 100,000 Kenya shillings to be given an appointment, because at the end of the day, I always say that we must be Kenyans who, regardless of whether our government that we campaigned for is in power, we must call out some of these things, because at the end of the day, they are affecting us as individuals. Because Newton is now lacking a seat at the table, and maybe he might have a seat somewhere else, but what about another qualified young person who is a KWANZA supporter who is saying, maybe I would have gotten that position for tourism because I have worked in the tourism sector, I have quite some knowledge in the tourism sector, but because my net worth is 100,000 Kenya shillings, 150K, I don't have any land to inherit, I don't have any townhouses that are worth billions of Kenyans of shillings, what do I do, So we must be honest with ourselves.
More is on the way probably, and Newton will tell us if there are more positions for every other person. And before we go into any other thing, remember this conversation is on Facebook. That is Gerald B Talk, and also YouTube. Keep your comments coming. I am a guest host, Cornelius Omuse, and we are doing Siasa Wednesday. It is nothing personal. Here we tackle things are tackled, and nothing is here personal. Discussing, getting solutions, and getting things working. And Newton, you are actually having something to respond on that before we go to another issue.
Cornelius, on the issue of a hustler not being at the table and all those things, this is a misguided thought again. And the thoughts of KWANZA are simple, Cornelius. We don't want to appoint a border person. And I'm not saying they're not qualified. They are qualified. You got me? So that to please the masses and tell them how we have appointed a hustler. And then in the end, we limit our policies to the few 10%. And that is why, if you listen to the speech of the president during Mashujaa Day, his government policies are guided towards the majority, who are the hustlers of this country. One, he mentioned about the farmers, who are low-scale farmers, getting affordable fertilizer. Two, he mentioned about access to social housing. You get me? Something that is affecting the local person, the common person, the hustler of this country. And when you see our friends from the other opposition side claiming that we are not giving the hustler narrative.
It's oversight. President said it's oversight, not opposition. Nobody is anyone to oppose.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if when they're giving that oversight in a way that to express that we are not keeping our manifesto towards the hustler nation, then they are just telling the people lies. Because one thing I've told you, one, it is the affordable fertilizer. Two, it is the affordable housing. And you saw yesterday, the president was here in Kibra, launching a massive...
We are coming to that.
You get me?
In fact, it's part of our topic.
I just want to help my sister here understand that our strategy, our policy statement is not on empowering those mamambogas or the hustlers through rewarding them with 1 or 2 positions. How many people are in the cabinet? 22. How many hustlers are in this country? Over 30 million. So should we focus our policies on things that are going to impact the whole generation of the hustler nation? Or should we just appoint one to see a representation? We have seen those appointments happen previously. You find a young person is appointed in government. When he goes there, he never thinks about the other young people who are outside there. And then now the government of the day will sit down and say, oh, we have appointed a young person to be in cabinet secretary. No, that is the truth, Ruth.
There has never been a young person appointed as a cabinet secretary.
They have, but
below the age of 35.
If not, there are many who have been appointed in the CAS positions.
The concentration here is not really about young or old.
Yes.
The concentration was, you see, you can even be at 50 and then your net worth is not beyond 1 million Kenya shillings.
Are you encouraging people to be poor?
Nobody is encouraging. The concern that was coming up here is that the part of inclusivity, that was a concern from a number of
and that's what we are saying, Cornelius, the inclusivity angle that Kenya Kwanza is looking at it is policies that impact the masses, not positions that are going to impact a few. You got me? And that's why I've mentioned to you the fertilizer issue, the housing, the affordable housing, the CRB clearance, and the hustler fund that is being launched on fast. That is worth 50 billion. Who among the people who are appointed is worth that 50 billion? None. But William Ruto, His Excellency the President, is directing his policies towards impacting the masses, not impacting a few generations. Because if that was the case, then we would have seen him doing policies that are going to inspire or to spur something like the growth of Safaricom, the growth of EABL. But if you look at his strategy and his thought towards this, is he's putting out plans to impact the life of that common person through agriculture, through the clearance of the CRB. There are a lot of young people here who will wish to go get a substantive loan, but they don't. They are listed on CRB. And that is why he's going to waive it, so that by 1st of December, when he officially launches the Hustlers Fund, these young people can go access this facility. And by the time of 5 years, end of 5 years, they'll be able to have grown this wealth in a different way. Would you imagine having a group of 10 billionaires and having millions of beggars in this country? No, and that is why his strategy is to have a lot of hustlers, people who are down the spectrum, to be able to grow their wealth. So that in 5 years' time, when you're seeing CS nominees, we're not seeing that gap of, oh, these guys are in Millionaires Club and these ones are poor. That is the mentality that His Excellency is trying to handle.
Thank you. Yes. Now, the focus, as you've said, is many must benefit, or the masses to benefit.
Exactly.
We get into this issue, Ruth. Yesterday, the president was in Kibra. Is it Kibra Langata?
Yes.
Kibra there. He was with Jalango and a number of leaders. We followed the discussion, and actually it's even trending right now, where he has promised that for 20 years, one-bedroom house, a bed-sitter, two-bedroom house, you'll be paying some money. Then from there, it's not just rent. This house remains yours. And actually, you can read the moods of the people who are saying that if indeed this project comes into fruition, then majority are going to benefit. You're in Nairobi, you understand what happens in this city, where when it comes to rent, it's another story. What's your take on this? And also, what do you think should be, which nut should be tightened more to see that this project sees the light of the day?
First of all, I'd like to ask the president to acknowledge that this is indeed a project that was started by the Uhuru Kenyatta when he bolted out of government, or he says that he was kicked out of government, depending on whichever is true. And remember that during the campaigns, he always insisted that nothing, absolutely nothing, was achieved under the Big Four agenda. And yet, one of his very first projects that he launched was the successfully done and completed housing project in Rongai. So one would ask themselves that, what exactly was the true situation? Was it that absolutely nothing was done, or actually work was done and he's now coming to continue with the work that had been done? And you see, sometimes when we are on the campaign trail, some honesty is good, because he even claimed on the campaign trail that he will not continue with any projects that Uhuru Kenyatta was doing. He will start his very own projects. But here we are seeing him appreciating how well the projects had been conceptualized and continuing with the same. So his idea of saying that, within 20 years, you will be able to own a house is not a new idea. This is actually an idea that Uhuru Kenyatta himself came up with. That was the original concept of affordable housing, that you are able to start renting a house. It's based on a lottery system where a random lottery is selected, you submit your name, you submit your application for getting a house. Randomly, you are selected. If you're selected, if you're lucky enough to get a house, you start paying rent for it. Then in 20 years, you own that particular house. There's nothing new that William Ruto is doing or the president is doing. It is basically what Uhuru Kenyatta's administration was striving to achieve, especially in the second term, when they brought to completion most of those Big Four agenda projects, including the affordable housing project. So for me, the moving forward, the only thing that would make this possible is to ensure that as many houses as possible are constructed. And clearly I've seen that he's saying that, even in counties, the project shall be extended to counties. And that is exactly what we need and want. Because the ordinary mwananchi, especially the one we are really fighting for, the one who cannot afford to own a house, the one who cannot afford to buy a piece of land, this would be a project that for them would actually work very well. In fact, if you think of it in terms of applying for that house when you're fresh from campus, or even when you're still in campus, when you're still in at the college level, tertiary level of learning, or you are just fresh from tertiary level of learning, you're 22 years old, you get awarded a house, you start paying rent. By the time you are 42, 43, you are owning a house. That is something that many of us would desire, but I would actually wish that the project would be so effective to an extent where it doesn't have to take you 20 years to own a house, that it would be made so affordable to the extent where it can only take you 10 years to own a house, because 20 years to some extent, by the time you are 40, you have a family. So if it's a one-bedroom house or it's a bed-sitter and it's taking you 20 years to own that particular bed-sitter, where will you be 20 years from now?
How about a generation?
At the age of 20 years, 20 years from now, if I am 28 or I am 27, 26, I'll be 46 with a family of probably 2 kids, 3 kids. We cannot fit in that one-bedroom house. So I think there needs to be ways to finance this particular project to the extent where the project is so affordable that one can own that house even in under 7 years. So that it makes sense for me, because 7 years from now, if I am 20, then I'll be 27. I can still continue living in that house for another 10 years. Then I begin renting it out as I plan to move to a bigger house that can accommodate my family.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Newton Ambogo has raised some crucial matters which I know you are in a better position to actually expound. on the procedures, because actually passing out, say there, someone will ask now, how will I be able to access this house? Will it reach the intended persons? You remember those houses that were actually constructed somewhere there at Langata, when Raila was the prime minister, and then
NHC.
afterwards, the NHC houses.
Yes.
When you go there, stories came up and what have you. So there is this concern that how can we ensure that these ones under the Ruto regime actually offers the best and reaches the intended population? And also her concern, she has talked of how do I own this house within seven years, because they've talked of 2,500 shillings per month.
Yes.
But if you can afford 25,000 shillings per month, are you prohibited to pay? And or even if you're able to pay once, can you shed light on that issue?
Something I want to correct my sister Ruth is this. His Excellency the President William Ruto, during the campaigns, there's no point he said in totality that he's going to stop whatever that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was doing. One thing that was very clear in his mind was that the Big Four agenda was not given the attention it deserved because of political reasons. And he said during the campaign trail, and I will challenge my sister to go and review. During his campaign trail, he mentioned it clearly and said, this Big Four has stalled because of political reasons. And when I take up this mantle, I am going to ensure that this Big Four agenda is going to happen. An example, one is manufacturing. Last week, we saw him meet the Kenya Association of Manufacturers to lay a plan for the success of that industry. Two, we have seen the affordable housing. And you see, there's something different between, I've heard you mention about the NHC and all those. The NHC program was not targeting the low-income hustlers that William Ruto is targeting. It targeted the employed civil servants. And that was the arrangement then. That is why you will not see a young person or a person from the Kibra region or area gets access to those particular houses, because those are two different ones. The NHC was affordable housing for a particular class, that is the civil servant. But now here we are targeting the low-income earners, the hawkers. You get me? The low people who live in slums. And that is why if you look at the quote that he was talking about, 2,500, if you are able to afford 25,000, then that is not your house. This is a social house. This is a house to just give you shelter over your head and not live in those slum mabati houses. And that is the key difference that Kenyans need to understand. And if you look at how the president is approaching this, I can take you back to into Eastlands. Eastlands, the government has a lot of land that is lying idle. And what you saw the other day is the creation of the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. That is just a way to enrich a few people, you get me, who have been in the process of buying land within the vicinity of Nairobi, so that they can say, let us create a Nairobi Metropolitan region, so that the prices of their land that they bought on that end, let's say like in Syokimau and all that, can appreciate in value, thus benefiting a few. And that is why the president has said, I am going to ensure that within Nairobi alone, the land that is available for the government, they have partnered to do social housing in all these regions, in Eastlands especially, and here in Langata, to ensure that people have access to these housing units that the president is intending to implement. So when my sister says here that the president said he's going to stop the Big Four or whatever the president was, it's only, even I want to refer her to whatever CS Macharia said yesterday. He said, Your Excellency, these projects were very viable. But because of political reasons, we were not able to implement. And he's the outgoing CS for housing. He was there and said, who was he serving? He was serving the presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta. But yesterday he said, because of this goodwill, our people are going to find it better to be in these affordable housing units, seeing the projects happen. And the projects are going to happen. I know there are wannabes who are saying it is not going to happen, but one thing I can challenge them is this thing is at the president's heart, and he's going to ensure that it is achieved to the latter.
Many thanks. We take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with many more looking into the Raila's impending cabinet and a number of things that are actually taking shape in the Kenyan political corridors as the country is awaiting the swearing in of the cabinet secretaries and also the appointments of the principal secretaries and the contentious issue of the chief administrative secretaries. We have Ms. Ruth Ambogo, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. She's a lawyer and a youth leader, and also Mr. KHAMASI, who is a Kenya KWANZA youth leader. What we do on the tackle, especially on the Siasa Wednesday, is to look into matters with a keener eye, looking into what if it could have been done this way. And it is hot. We like the positions that our panelists have taken this morning. It is inspiring, educative, bold, and credible. I am your guest host, Cornelius Omuse. Keep it here on the tackle. Siasa Wednesday, we have Mr. Newton KHAMASI, who is the youth leader of the Kenya KWANZA, and Ruth Ambogo, a lawyer, and she's also a youth leader, and a firebrand politician from the oversight side, according to President William Ruto.
Opposition, call it for what it is.
Opposition, President Ruto said that opposition does not exist in Kenya, it's just roles, the oversight, then they rule. Before we went for the break, we were looking into issues of the appointments of the cabinet secretaries, the housing sector, and all that. Now here comes a situation of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who happens to be in the same camp with Ruth Ambogo politically. It is said that when he gets back to the country, they'll name a shadow cabinet. And before we go to Newton, we begin by Ruth.
Yes.
Looking into the credibility of this shadow cabinet. It used to really work very well during the old constitution. And currently, do you think since 2013, when we promulgated the new constitution, when the Jubilee regime took over, the viability of the shadow cabinet, is it really something that can work?
You choose to run your position the way you feel you want to run it. The same way you choose to run your government, the way you feel you want to run it. And if Raila Odinga feels that a shadow cabinet is what will make his opposition effective, then hand it to him. Let us see what that will be able to achieve. Of course, what we understand is that a shadow cabinet has zero space in our current constitution, but it is a creation of what he would wish to, how he would wish to run his government, that he has a cabinet that checks the current cabinet in terms of just being a system of checks and balances, where you have an individual whose role there is to counter check the activities of what the current cabinet does, and that in its, and I feel that creation would actually be a creation that would work very well for the opposition today. That we would always know that if we want to see whether the CS for Treasury is actually guiding us in the right direction, because remember, as Kenyans, we don't have information about the intricacies of the Ministry for instance, we don't have, most of us don't have the intricacies of understanding what these ministries do. And I understand that, yes, Kenyans are informed, and we, as more governments keep coming in, we get more informed Kenyans. But what about the common ordinary mwananchi who does not understand what are the real roles of the cabinet secretaries, you know? And they would need somebody from the opposition who tells you that indeed this particular decree by this particular cabinet secretary goes against the law, or this particular plan or program that had been scheduled to be started around this particular period of time that would benefit Kenyans has not started. This amount of money in this particular ministry that was meant for this particular project has been squandered or has been used for other means other than the means that it was intended for. That a proper shadow cabinet is what would help us understand and know what is going on in every key ministry. I mean, personally, as somebody who is I'd consider myself considerably informed, I would still not be able to come here today and tell you what every ministry is doing. I would not be able to table down and tell you where every ministry is failing in terms of its functions and duties, where every ministry is succeeding in terms of its duties and functions. So I would even want to see, I would actually want to rely on a shadow cabinet to be able to inform me, for instance, that in the Ministry of Energy, this is happening, that in the Ministry of Energy, we are importing this, we are at this level of importation, we are exporting this amount in terms of electricity, or we are importing this amount in terms of electricity. I'd want to know the intricacies of why the cost of energy is so high, you know? Why is it so high? Nobody's explaining to me right now why for the same amount of money that I was buying a higher number of tokens a few months ago, now I have to receive lesser tokens because I am not very well informed or educated around energy, you know. So I would want a person who is qualified to make me understand what is happening within that energy sector. And I do hope to see that. I want to see Raila Odinga's choices. I want to see whether he would make better choices than William Ruto based on the kind of people. And you see, the kind of choices he will make for us would also make us see the kind of president that he would have become. Because to be honest, in very many Kenyans' minds and hearts, he is still their president. So there's nothing you can do about it. Remember, we have the freedom of choice, we have the freedom of association, the freedom of conscience, the freedom to decide that, you know what, you might have been elected as the president, or you might have been allegedly elected as the president, but in my heart, I know who is my president. Yes. This happens all over. In America, you could see when Donald Trump was allegedly elected, or he was elected, there were many Americans who came out and said, you know what, you're not my president, and there's nothing you can do about that. You cannot arrest them for deciding that Donald Trump is not their president. So for those who feel that, you know, Raila Odinga is their president, or is the person that they still listen to and they still rely on for guidance, I mean, for them, that shadow cabinet would actually work for them very well.
There are those who hold this opinion, Ruth, before I come to Newton, that actually there is a bigger challenge when working with a shadow cabinet with a new constitution. They are holding this opinion that why can't he with the members of parliament and the senators that he has, that among them, those ones probably who are not committee members, he picks the best and then says, Ruth Ambogo, apart from being the woman representative for Vihiga County, this is your role. You'll be checking on agriculture. Agriculture will be your part with your shadow committee, looking into it so that when you speak, they are listening to Ruth Ambogo as a woman representative at the same time as this person that is heading a special committee. Between going with the committees and shadow cabinet, which one looks more viable and that can offer results? That's the concern of many people.
Yes.
That if today you appoint Kalonzo as a prime cabinet secretary, Musali is there. You appoint someone else as a cabinet secretary for agriculture, and someone is also there in the government. Can it really work with the checks and balances that we have?
Remember that Raila has not told us what formula he's going to use to appoint his shadow cabinet. He has not told us what kind of people he's going to look for or that he will appoint in those particular positions. So all we can do is wait and see, because there's no formula.
Yeah.
There's nothing that prescribes a shadow cabinet in the constitution. This is going to be pretty much a new idea for most Kenyans, especially the ones who are experiencing government for the first time, who are voting for the first time. So let us wait and see what kind of people he appoints. He might actually just surprise us and decide to use the elected leaders that he has to strengthen his side of politics, to strengthen his opposition, to strengthen the system of checks and balances that we have, to strengthen the elected leaders that he has, so that in 2027, they stand a better chance of producing government, So let us wait and see.
Many thanks. Mr. Newton, briefly before we jump into something, time is catching up with us. What is your take on this shadow cabinet, and how do you think, do we need it, or there's a better way that the oversight side, I'm cautious with that word, can keep the government on
What
check?
I can tell you, Cornelius, is simple. We just hope that the former Prime Minister and the Azimio presidential leader, the Azimio coalition leader, is not in a mischief plan to sneak into government through this shadow government that he wants to purport to create. Because something that His Excellency William Ruto has been categorical, it is that he is the president, and the country has one president. The stories of Ruth Ambogo here telling us that the president, the people's president and all that, is what made this country make some fake and bad decisions between 2017 and 2022. And that is where we are as a country. So on regards to him picking the shadow cabinet, we wish him all the best in killing his political journey completely. And what we can say is all this reason that people are giving, it is deserved, it is all that. It is not. We have a parliament which has committees. And those committees are empowered through the constitution to keep check in all these ministries. If you check at the parliament, there are committees respectively to each ministerial position that has been formed in this country. You'll find a committee on security. You'll find a committee on tourism. You'll find a committee on agriculture. Why can't he use his elected leaders to champion his interest or to keep the government in check instead of forming another government in the shadows? And I can tell you this, Cornelius. In 2-3 years' time, you will hear Raila Amolo Odinga anataka nusu mkate. But this time round, it is not there to be offered. So it is a journey in futility.
Thank you. Now we fly a little bit to the counties and we look into a situation that has happened in Meru. It's been coming out something like comic relief or something like serious and serious. You saw the governor removing, let me use the word, removing all the MCAs in the WhatsApp group. That's one. Two, when she went to address the members of county assemblies, they walked out on her. And the complaint that has come is that the involvement of the spouse into government affairs. And this thing is being looked into two ways, that when you go to counties that are run by men, there is that position of the county's first lady. I'm the first lady of the county. When the governor is going this direction, the first lady can go even launch projects and do a number of things. Yes. But there are those ones who feel that Honorable Kawira Mwangaza is being crucified because of the gender issue or the lack of looking into an issue that what if the governor is a woman? What is the position of the man?
The gentleman.
But another issue is coming up that the man is actually overstepping the mandate. Let's begin with Ruth before stones are thrown on our side, especially in matters regarding gender.
Yeah.
What do you get of this situation of Meru County?
I think it is just as you have put it, that we were so used to governors being men and their first ladies taking over certain roles. And there are certain counties where the governors have actually also just made it clear that, my first lady will be handling the following number of projects. Or in certain counties, first ladies automatically decide without having to announce that they will be doing certain projects or they'll be taking over certain roles. And I think that that is the situation where we find ourselves in, where we are the idea and the concept of, and the former female governors who have existed tended to have their husbands away from political affairs, that their husbands happened to be people who are also equally career men. I'm not saying that Kawira's husband is not a career man. I mean, he does whatever he does. But the governors, first men of former governors or former female governors, who some of them still hold office today, like Anne Waiguru's husband, are people who are career people. They have organizations, they have offices that they go to on a daily basis. So they wouldn't, many of them never wanted to be involved in governance, and they would leave their wives to do whatever it is they wished to do. So with Kawira coming out and publicly saying that my husband will be taking over these particular roles, she made it very clear. At first I thought that there was some level of nepotism in it when she appointed her husband. But then when she made it clear that he would be serving on zero salary, then that's when I knew that basically what she was doing was just clarifying what roles the husband would be taking over. But remember that there have been allegations that over and above the husband's issues, that she has appointed family members into her government, and that for me would be a problem. But still, even if that is a problem or an issue, I mean, how many governors appoint family members into their governments, and the MCAs don't behave in the manner in which these MCAs were behaving? I'm not saying that we should condone governors appointing family members into their cabinets, but where you now make it impossible for a governor to rule, I want to believe that there are procedures that are in place to ensure that when such an issue comes up, it can be resolved, as opposed to making it so impossible for one to lead simply because, she has given certain roles and duties to her husband or her first man, in terms of duties that the first man would be able to conduct within the county. I remember I was at a particular interview when that appointment came from her to her husband, and my co-panelist, who was a man, was saying that, the husband needs to be given duties because if he does not have duties, then he would be a menace to the society. And basically what she or he was trying to put across was that if left to his own devices or means, he would be able to cause some damage within the county. And you would understand what I'm trying to talk about. Get it. So basically, it is a new concept for people that a female governor is appointing the husband and giving them special duties. But also, the problem with Kawira's situation is that it seems to be so complicated. There have been claims and concerns that she's arrogant. But you see, for me, I wouldn't take the claims about her being arrogant seriously, because one thing that happens to women in leadership is that when you come out to be a strong woman in leadership, when you come out to be a woman who knows what she wants in leadership, then many people tend to label you as being arrogant, as being bitter, as being, all names, man of names will be labeled at you. And some of these names are names that I have had the privilege, I would call it privilege, because at the end of the day, whenever I find people calling women in leadership as arrogant, as bitter, as whatever, I automatically say this must be a woman who understands what she wants out of life and who knows where she's going, and a lot of people are not happy with that. But generally speaking, if she indeed has overstepped the leadership and integrity provisions of the Constitution and of the Leadership and Integrity Act, then by all means she needs to be subjected to the right channels. But then also, if the MCAs are just generally being difficult, my advice to her would be to dissolve that county assembly and let them go back to elections, and we see if even 3/4 of them will be able to get back to the county assembly, because you might just find that some of these MCAs are people who are just intent on making it difficult for her, and they want to intimidate her all through, and they want to come up with ways in which they can extort her money, because some of these MCAs make it difficult for governors to rule by pulling up such stands so that they can be given money to be silenced, you know. But when they find a woman who is saying that, you know what, at no point will you see me bribing you for you to enable me to continue with my functions and duties. If that is the case, let the county government be dissolved. Warudi kwa debe, waone if they will come back to power, if even 3/4 or 1/4 of them will make it back to their seats.
The only thing here probably is for her to write to the president to suspend it, which includes also how will go, and there will be no election until further notice. Mr. Newton, Kawira was elected on an independent ticket, and then afterwards she joined the Kenya Kwanza side. I don't know whether up to this far you've taken stock on what is happening there, probably if she's being accused maliciously, whether you've constituted something to save the situation in Meru County, because as this happens, remember that also devolution at that county is at stake.
One thing I can say about the Meru incidents is simple. One is that whatever is happening to the detriment of the Meru people, Meru residents. And it is so sad to see the members of county assembly behaving shamefully, sorry to use that word, disrespectfully, and with a lot of pettiness. Cornelius, if you're an elected member of county assembly and the governor comes to the assembly to open it officially so that it can be able to serve the people, and you as an elected member of county assembly who is straight-thinking Kenyan or leader and walks out, it shows a lot of disrespect, not to the governor, but to the county residents, to the people of Meru, to the country at large, and even to the processes of that county assembly, of which it is something that is not supposed to be tolerated or encouraged at all in this day and era of our time. And therefore, I'll just wish to challenge the MCAs to kindly focus on the role that they were elected to do, that is to oversight the county government, that is elected, duly elected by the people of Meru, and that is Governor Kawira, who was given the opportunity to serve the people. Yes, I agree with you, the challenge of being independent. But you see, the challenge of being independent or being in this particular faction or the other ended with the election. The people of Meru resoundingly voted for her to be the governor. So that is a fact. And we as the Kenyan people or the people of Meru, they are supposed to stand up and respect that authority. Disrespecting authority is even an act against the wishes of God, because God advises us to respect authority, of which something that is not happening. Another thing is, as Ruth has said, these MCAs, they might think they are trying to pull those sideshows and those power tricks. But at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to lose. Because when it comes to the wrath of the voter, they are very observant. And when the time will come, they will all be voted out. The case of study is Makueni County.
Yes.
And we have seen the counties that have experienced this type of pettiness.
Pettiness.
You get me? They have ended up derailing themselves. Look at Embu County. Wambora had gone through a lot of court cases. Instead of serving the people, they were busy fighting in court. What did the people gain? Nothing.
Nothing.
You go to Makueni, it's only that Makueni governor was sober-headed. At least he managed to do 1, 2, 3 things. But if you look at the development record, they lagged behind. Look at Nairobi County. We ended up forming a Nairobi Metropolitan Service that was unnecessary, that money would have been implemented in different projects and achieved. And if you look at Kakamega County, it has never experienced these dramas.
Dramas.
And if you go there, you'll realize that even pending bills are below 10 million. Yes. You get me? Because of that, giving your leader that opportune time to serve you and to demonstrate what he can. Something else I just want to advise the MCAs of Meru. The only time they can try to impeach or think of impeaching the governor is after 18 months.
Yes.
So whatever they are doing now is just derailing development at the
For
county.
the next 18 months.
Because you see, the governor needs to have CECs. The CECs have not been approved with the county assembly. They cannot work. 2, she has to appoint the chief officers. You get me? So this issue of them directing the issues to the husband, that is pettiness, that is misguided. And I believe that Kawira's husband has the right also to serve the people of Meru.
Yeah.
If he's qualified, he's a darling to the youth of Meru County.
Yeah.
You saw the other day they hosted a function with some musician from Nigeria.
Yeah.
Who is an international figure and came there. You saw how the young people felt they have been involved. Mukami, who was appointed the CEC for the nominee for youth in Meru County. So those are the things that we need to see. And my challenge is just to the Meru MCAs. They need to stand up, think straight, and try to be objective and stop being petty.
Many things. Now, as we sum up today's Siasa Wednesday, there is something that happened over the weekend, and we cannot end this show without bringing Uncle Rigiji, the deputy president, on board. Actually, there are 2 statements that he brought out in Ukambani.
Yes.
One was that he was about to even clash with the head of state when appointments for cabinet secretaries were being done for the Ukambani region.
Yes.
And he went further by saying that his reason for probably defiance in the discussion was that very few votes came from that place. Then number 2, he went further by talking about the former prime, not former prime, the
Current.
The chief cabinet secretary of
chief
Azimio.
cabinet secretary of RUTH side, that tulimwona kwa Wanja, then
He went to Homa Bay.
we went to Homa Bay. So all this thing has brought this issue of inclusivity, cohesion, healing, and people coming together.
Yes, definitely.
You from the government side will help us understand, people are still asking themselves that suppose I come from Homa Bay, or I come from Ukambani, or I even come from Siaya, and I voted Kenya Kwanza regime.
Yes.
Do we have that parameter to tell that Newton, because we are not even very sure whether he voted for President Ruto? We are not very sure whether they voted for Raila Odinga.
No, I voted for Raila.
We are not sure. That is you.
I am giving you
So,
the assurance.
on the part of inclusivity, there is that worry where people are really worried by such a statements from higher caliber leader. Is it right? The people safe? Is the healing process ongoing? That after elections, let's come and work together for the country?
Cornelius, on that, I'll just say this. You see, we have to face reality. And yes, there are places where the current president did not get votes. But that notwithstanding, we have seen the president visit those particular regions. If you can remember, his first maiden trip was made in Nyanza region.
Homa Bay.
Homa Bay. And in Homa Bay, he is to launch a housing project in that particular region. Is this a region that gave William Ruto the votes? No. But he started with there. He has not gone to these other counties like Rift Valley to promise them goodies. What he did, he went to Kericho for Thanksgiving pit. You got me? So people need to understand that, yes, despite the political space that we are in, the president is determined in all humanly means possible to ensure that as a country, we are brought back together, we are united, and we forge forward. Because for him, he has always said this, and he has been constant in his pronunciation, that our key enemy is a bad economy. And in every program that the president is handling or is doing, his goal is to uproot that economical challenges that Kenyans are having. And we have seen that. If you see whatever he's going around saying, it is towards or geared towards ensuring that there is, we have enough food security. And if you can see, he's visiting these areas depending on the need. Kitui, there is a challenge of hunger. And he went there, he made his pronunciation in regards to helping our country become food secure. And Rigiji, rather, the Kenyan people just need to understand him. He's our deputy president. And there is a way he communicates. He has his quality way of communicating. The way I communicate is not the way Cornelius will communicate. That is not the way Ruth Ambogo will communicate. So that is his unique way of communicating. Not in a way to peace or to annoy people, but to be friendly.
Yeah.
You remember even His Excellency mentioned and said, look guys, I had a discussion with Kalonzo Musyoka, but Kalonzo Musyoka told me that before I gave him a job, he has a job to do of oversight. And the president said, it's okay, you proceed and do the oversight job. You can see this is a president who has a tone that expresses a united front for the country. Yes.
Many thanks. Now, Ruth, as we sum up the discussion, election is behind us as a country. The country is facing a lot, not only here, it's a global recession economically, climate change threat, the weakening of the shilling, unemployment, hunger, drought, and everything. How do we really maneuver into this situation together? Because at the end of the day, there is politics, but how do we maneuver? Because politics dictates everything.
I think I'll just pick on from where Newton has left, that, there's need to unite the country. Because at the end of the day, emotions are still, the people who still have emotions from this last election, people who still feel that probably their candidate ought to have won, but then that is not the case and a different government is in power. We must find a way of ensuring that we take on a tone that is conciliatory, take on a tone that unites us, take on a tone that brings us to a point where we are saying that work needs to be done, as opposed to, creating division by our statements and words. And over and above that, I think that government needs to get down to work. And I still feel that in as much as Newton would say that the president is more conciliatory, he still a lot of times forgets that we are done with the campaigns. How many times has he been quoted saying our competitors? And there are no competitors now. You are government work. We need to see the prices of goods go down. We need to see the quality of life improve. We need to see money in people's pockets, as Musalia kept saying. We need to see change. We need to see the productive energy of Kenyans being put to work, meaning that we want to see the manufacturing sectors revived and Kenyans getting down to work, Kenyans who otherwise do not have jobs getting down to work, producing, because as a country, the only way to move forward is if we can produce as opposed to consuming. If we can produce in more quantity than we are consuming, so that we become a country that can not only feed ourselves, sustain ourselves, but over and above doing that, we can be able to even export to other countries and make business and grow our economy, grow our GDP, and rise as an economy together. So for me, the most critical part is reconciliation. The most critical part is how do we put the energies, productive energies of Kenyans into use.
Thank you. Ruth, before probably we now really sum up, there is an issue, Newton,
Yes.
on the matter of UNGA feeding program that is in households. When the president came in, he was particular from day one, and you remember even how he took away the issue of the subsidy, and he explained why. He talked of for how long can we sustain this?
Yes.
And he talked of he is going to production, measuring on agriculture. And when you look at his history, even right from when he was a minister for agriculture, how he performed well, and there was enough food supply and all that. He's relying on the history that he was able to do that.
Yes.
Now, will you kindly bring it to us, the roadmap to this? He has talked yesterday of 1 year from now, things shall have gotten to the better.
Yes.
The roadmap to that and some of the hindrances, because people are talking, yes, the president has even released the fertilizer and support to the farmers. But these people in between who may want to ensure that even though they have been subsidized, mahindi lazima ibaki 10,000 and all that, there's still that anxiety.
Yes. Cornelius, the beauty about His Excellency, the President William Ruto, is a realist. And he looks at things objectively. If you can notice, as all this process was happening of the price of unga going up, there are people who are benefiting from it, the cartels. And these cartels have made it so difficult in a way that the price of unga cannot go down instantly, the way our president had envisioned. And if you can look at it again, this same plan, the president right now, luckily, hopefully by Thursday, he will have sworn his cabinet in. That is when tomorrow. That is tomorrow. That is when now the president will have a full substantive grip of the government.
Partially because remember the PSS are not...
Exactly, but at least it will have started working.
A cabinet.
And hopefully by next week, we'll have the PSS also confirmed. And now the government will be in place and things will start rolling. Something else I want to just mention about the 1 year thought that he mentioned about yesterday. As I say, this is a president who is a realist. And when he says 1 year, that does not mean that it will wait for 12 months for the price of unga to come down. Who knows? When this team of his CSS come in place and they hold their first cabinet meeting, I told you he's a team player. He welcomes new ideas. And all these CSS who are being vetted, they had different ideas on how they can implement, but they could not implement because they are not substantive CSS.
Sure.
And therefore, what Kenya should do, they should just be a little bit patient. Actually, we should start counting the 100 days from tomorrow, when now his government is now taking shape. Because now, previously, he could hold meetings with the previous CSS. Of course, there's an arrangement that the previous CSS had with the cartels that were in place, that were benefiting from this, and they're not happy. Therefore, they will try to look to make the president of the day look like a failure in regards to not fulfilling the promise of reducing the price of unga. But the president has said, I have not failed. And I can tell you, we are going to have a lasting solution for this. Not just to introduce subsidies that have not been productive for the country. The country has saved a lot of money. And the other day, you heard him talk about saving 300 billion from the current budget and reviewing those budgets. What do you think is the plan of him after saving that 300 billion? Because there is a way he wants to reorganize his government and his activities and his policy frame so that at the end of the day, we don't just have a daily solution. Singapore underwent a painful restructuring process. And that is where it is now, as a first world economy that is transformative, is changing lives, not because of subsidies, but because of systems that are working and are progressive. And he just has 5 years. Let us give him time. It is not even a month or 2 months after he was sworn in. So what I'm telling Kenyans is just be patient with the president. He knows and is brilliant enough. He's a planner. He's a master planner. I call him a master planner because what he does is always a thought out process. He's someone who is a hardworking president. And as we go by, I believe as a country, we are going to benefit not only with the price of unga, but also the price of fuel. And also the economy in the entirety of it. Because one, we'll have affordable housing. We'll have cheap unga at the end of the day, sustainable food for the country, that is food security, the manufacturing industry. And you've seen, he has discouraged people who bring in already made products. And instead of us taking out things and then they come back, we process them and then we send them. Add value addition, progress. You get me? And I believe with time, the Kenyan people will start seeing the impact of whatever the president is doing.
Many thanks. Ruth had spoken much on that, but finally, you can give us your view on this issue of the chief administrative secretaries. There's already a case. And then at the same time, the Public Service Commissioner said that they actually saw the process of the opinions being taken regarding the position. What is your take on this position? Is it really needed?
The position is necessary. It is necessary because the docket of cabinet secretaries is one that is very heavy, and an individual cannot possibly handle all the demands of that particular office. And the particular demands I'm talking about is on a daily basis, a cabinet secretary is requested to attend functions all over the place. A cabinet secretary is expected to work, come up with policy be able to implement what the government wants implemented, and still show up and explain to people what they do. So that is where CASs come in, where they appear on behalf of cabinet secretaries, where the cabinet secretaries cannot appear. They assist with policy formulation. They assist with the engagement of the citizens to explain to the citizens what various ministries are up to. So the necessity of that office cannot be overlooked, that it is quite necessary for us to have that particular office. What is in contention is that when public participation was conducted, was the proper public participation done when the very first CASs were being appointed? That according to Section 27 of the Public Service Act, that when you're conducting public service on the creation of any new office, certain procedures need to be followed. Number one, as you're conducting that particular public participation, allow the citizens to comment about the suitability of the creation of that particular office to the existing offices that currently exist. What will be the salaried expectations of that particular office? What will be the functions and duties of that particular new office and the office holder and things like that? Those were not observed when the first public participation was being done. So the question is not whether the positions are legitimate or not, but whether proper public participation was followed. And the answer to that is no. So meaning that if proper public participation is now done before the CASs are appointed, then they can go ahead, the new government can go ahead and appoint CASs. Yes.
Do you also feel that indeed when it's time we also need the CAS or the assistance of the minister, in other words?
Yes, we really need it. And I had a different thought around it. And the thought was that CAS should be kinder, be restricted to the young generation, so that these young people can be given an opportunity to be part and parcel of the leadership of these cabinet secretaries. Because as you understand, Cornelius, is these young people can actually, from the government that we have right now, they have not been appointed to be CS. But now, if they get an opportunity through the CAS position, that gives them a position to be able to influence and to participate in leadership. Something that I feel will be critical and will be key to ensuring that we have an all-inclusive government through the CAS positions. Yes.
Many thanks. As you sum up, probably, when do you now give permission to, especially the critics, to start knocking at the door of the Kenya Kwanza government or the President Ruto regime?
Immediately the cabinet is sworn in, immediately the PS are in and they are working. Now they have started implementing the Kenya Kwanza plan. Because you remember, we had a plan. And we still have the plan. And in all the activities that the president has been carrying out, you can notice that it is in tandem with the plan that we had as Kenya Kwanza. And we look forward to implementing it in totality, not in bits, not in pieces, but in totality, to ensure that we have a subscribed country that is able to inspire economic growth from where we are as a country.
Many thanks. That is Newton KHAMASI, who is a youth leader within the Kenya Kwanza coalition. Him, together with RUTH AMBOGO, the youth leader, and also a lawyer, have been able to take us through the political happenings in the country on this day that we've been discussing, the Siasa Wednesday. Remember, on the tackle, things are looked at in a different way, offering opinions, solutions, and what is the way forward. I was your guest host, Cornelius Omuse. Till next time, I wish you a very good day.